Thank you for joining us. We know it's a hot day and hoping that you'll stay with us and seek some refuge inside where it's slightly cooler in here. I'm Diana Swain at CBC. I'm soon to be joining News Network as a host during the afternoon, but I'm also the senior investigative correspondent for the network. And today I'm talking with two other women, and we'll be joined by a third shortly, about a topic that is of interest not just to women, but to anyone who enjoys watching television or film, and that's the role of women in film, in front of the camera and behind. And we want to talk today about what we thought was a pretty edgy, catchy way of starting the conversation, and that's the virgin temptress dichotomy in film. Have we actually moved forward in the industry, what we're representing on film, and what might be holding it back? So we've got two women, and we'll be joined soon by a third who's parking. If you've tried to move around Toronto, you know that you say you'll be there in 10 minutes, and today it's an hour and a half to get there. So Jennifer Podemski, who is both an actor and a producer, will join us shortly. But with me right now from CBC, a colleague, General Manager of Programming, Sally Catto. Hi. And also from Women in Film and Television, or WIFT, the Executive Director, Heather Webb.
Hello.
So I'm actually going to start the conversation a little bit into the conversation because we've started already back in the room when we're talking about some of this. So talking about the female protagonist first in film, how would you describe the protagonist, Sally, as you're looking at scripts and projects that come in front of you at CBC and you're looking for strong female roles? What do you most often see come to you?
I mean, it depends if it's a drama or a comedy, obviously genre, but taking drama, what we like to see and look for is nuance in character. So, you know, often, and it gets into that virgin temptress, just that whole realm of discussion, you know, what we don't want to see is this one-dimensional view of a woman either being an innocent in need of help or, you know, a horrible person who's uber controlling, who's not relatable. So what we're always looking for is some kind of relatability and authenticity. I mean, do we always see that? No. You know, I think it's difficult. I'll be honest and say, when I receive scripts written by women, I mean, this is logical and obvious, and I'm not saying there's many examples of men who can capture a woman's voice, but I do think sometimes that is an issue and a challenge. When I see female characters at times in scripts that are not written by women, they don't have that sense of authenticity, and often the female characters are not nearly as active in terms of their dialogue and their role. So that's something like right off the bat that just consistently seems to be a bit of an issue.
Heather, is it right to assume, because I'm, you know, from the outside looking in on this part of the industry, is there frustration among women in the industry, both in front of the camera and behind, at maybe a lack of progress on this particular point?
Yes, I think definitely, and you know, there's been a lot of dialogue happening in the mainstream media lately, and a lot of studies that have come out, and I think, yeah, when you look at the numbers, sometimes we think, oh, we've made progress, but when you actually start looking down at the stats, and we were talking about, you know, some of the studies have come out, the stats are really depressing. When you're talking just about protagonists, you know, San Diego did a report this year looking at the top 100 grossing films in the US in 2013, and I think only 30% of women had speaking parts.
That's
only,
insane.
You know, which is crazy, and 15% were protagonists. Like, it's just, the numbers are abysmal, and we hear it every day from our members that it's a struggle. It's a struggle both for women trying to break in behind the scenes, but also to get their stories put across on screen.
I wanted to share some of those stats with you, actually, just to give you some context for what we're talking about, that it's not just perception, but it's real. If you take a look at a study done recently, I think it was last year, it was published by the University of Southern California Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism. Here are some of the findings. So as Heather was saying, the representation of women on screen in the highest earning films has in fact dropped to its lowest point in the past 5 years. So you think that there's progress being made, even incrementally. In fact, in some ways, it's gone the other direction. As you were saying, of the 100 most successful films at the box office in 2012, just 28.4% of the speaking characters were female. And it sounds like something we'd be talking to you about in the 1940s, not 2014. And in fact, again, that's a drop from 32.8% in 09. 6% of the most lucrative films had equal numbers of male and female speaking characters. And then even this report found that most worrying was the way in which many of those female characters, even when they did have a speaking role, the way in which they were represented. Nearly a third of those who spoke had sexually revealing clothes, the highest percentage in the 5 years the survey's been compiled. So, I guess people in the industry, how are they reacting to this? What's behind it? Why does it feel like there's a slip slide in the wrong direction?
It's interesting. I'm not sure if you read the article. There was a review of Aaron Sorkin recently, was on a panel and was asked, why there is such a low percentage of female protagonists in film. And I don't think the audience was too pleased with his response, which was that first, in terms of Hollywood, everything is driven by what can make money. And, everything is driven by that. And those high action, high octane films generally, I think, are usually, in his opinion, written by men. But he also said something odd, that when couples go to the movies, it's usually the girlfriend or wife who picks the movie, and they're picking those movies. And so there was an issue with, really? You're going to blame the women again?
We really enjoy being portrayed that way.
I do think, though, in television, we're seeing really, I wouldn't say a renaissance, but far more opportunities for women and far more of an emergence of unique women's voices. And I think that's where, they're not as driven initially by that bottom line. And you've got Netflix, which is subscription-based, and you've got, Amazon, and everything's upping the bar. So you have a series like Orange is the New Black, which has the most remarkable, response to it, because I think audiences are craving those strong female characters of different ages, with different backgrounds, with some authenticity that comes from having a very strong female showrunner, Jenji Kohan.
Well, it's interesting that we're finding that kind of a divide during, the film festival. Heather, do you agree that film is maybe lagging behind television in terms of recognizing stronger female roles right now and seeing them as more than either the virgin or the temptress?
I agree. I think we keep talking about the golden age of television right now, and not that the stats are fabulous for women in TV, but I think, like we were talking about, Orange is the New Black and some of the other programs, they've got girls, they've got some really great, strong female showrunners happening in TV right now, and I don't know if it's necessarily because of the new platforms, too, that kind of give them more license, what have you, but especially with, Orange is the New Black, the diversity alone, and that's the other thing, it's one thing to talk about women, but when you take out when you take the stats and look at non-Caucasian women,
Right.
We're looking at low single-digit numbers, and a show like that is so diverse. It's amazing to see that, and to see that that's the focus, and that people are reacting to it and loving it. So
what is standing in the way of it? Not to champion Eric Sorkin now, but is he right? Is the industry responding to an audience that's only paying to go see that? Or is an audience waiting for better offerings?
I think an audience is waiting for better offerings. I really am more equipped to speak to television, but it goes back to, it's a truth universally known that Elizabeth Bennet is, one of the greatest female protagonists of our time. There's always been, to me, an audience for strong female characters. Why do legions of people love that book and love that character? Because I think audiences crave that, but when they're given the opportunity to be exposed to it, and I do think we're seeing it on shows like Veep with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and even Mindy Kaling with the Mindy Project, they are responding to it, they're loving it. But I also think we have to ease up on the idea that everything should have a mass audience. I think that there's a place for that, but there's also a place for more niche programming. All shows can't be all things to all people, and I think when you try to go so broad like that, those are the shows that often get eliminated, the ones that I think might be more nuanced, more seemingly risk-taking, but then the risks pay off, like in Orange.
Where are advertisers in that discussion? Because you'll get scripts, you'll get pitches for pilots and shows, and you've got to decide what you're going to greenlight. And you choose something. How much of your consideration is not just what's in front of you and the quality of the writing or the plot or the storyline? You're trying to figure out if it's going to catch an audience. Is it a hard sell with advertisers, or are they looking for something that is going to be a big breakout hit, like Mindy Kaling's show, or The Good Wife, or Girls, or things that do tend to represent women in stronger roles?
They seem, from my experience, and I don't work directly in revenue, but certainly have experience working with the broadcaster, they want numbers. They don't, obviously women 25 to 54 is a crucial demographic for them. I don't think they're so concerned with how they get it. It's an interesting challenge for us at the CBC because obviously it's no secret we have financial issues, and revenue is important to us, but at the same time, as a public broadcaster, we feel very strongly, especially in the new direction we're headed, that we really have to start with story, and we have to we want to be doing programming that's more risk-taking, that is maybe more nuanced, more serialized, and we know right off the top that is not necessarily going to always bring in a broad, sweeping audience. We think that it will in most cases, but you have to take some risks. So, we balance our schedule. Some of our programming we know will attract that kind of revenue, but others we're going to take a risk and see what happens. And to that end, I think we have some very strong programming coming up with female protagonists that we haven't really seen in a while on the CBC. So
we've talked about what we are seeing, what as consumers we're consuming, but Heather, I'm wondering, behind the scenes, is it different? Are women better represented than they appear to be on camera?
I would say no. It looks, when you look at the stats of who's in the writing rooms, who's behind the camera, who's in the editing suites, there hasn't really been much progress. We seem to be flatlined for the last 20 years, or some of the stats coming out of the UK when they're looking at behind the scenes. And yeah, I think it was something like 2%. Directors on those 100 gross films, and we've seen recently that women who are directors can make some, they can make fabulous and box office successes. Look at Frozen, look at some of these things coming out. And the stats actually play that out, that if women are given the same budgets on films, there is basically no difference between the box office success between a man and a woman directing if they're working with the same budget. And often we find women are not getting those big budgets in feature film chances. That's the problem.
And it's true in television as well. I think there's a real shortage of opportunities for women directors, and it's hard to find experienced women directors. It's becoming much easier because they aren't being given the opportunities to develop, because men are repeatedly given those opportunities. So that's been a challenge as well.
Is it fair to assume that if a woman is the director, the producer, the script writer, that there is going to be a strong female role, or is that an assumption that's not fair, that a woman is not necessarily going to deliver that script?
There's absolutely the possibility that a woman won't deliver that script. It really comes down to the strength of the writing, and the talent involved. But having said that, as I said, I think your chances of getting that authenticity are so much stronger when you have a talented female writer behind it.
Is it hard to develop a script that shows a woman who's outside of her 20s? You're saying, I'm certainly outside of my 20s, but every time I turn on a television show, or I'm deciding to go see a movie for a woman who I think might represent someone in my age group, it's Diane Keaton again. And I keep thinking, she cannot be the only woman in Hollywood my age. This is insane. There must be others. I can't be alone. Why is it that we're seeing such singular faces representing a certain age demo, but there's 20-somethings till you're tripping over them?
Yeah, I think, and again, it kind of comes back to this kind of temptress, virgin temptress. And it's not only just in the screen industry. If you look back centuries in visual arts, it was kind of the Madonna horror syndrome. Was the same kind of thing. I come from the visual arts background, but I think we're still kind of caught in that trap, and it's always been that men can get away with playing, can be in their 70s, literally kind of falling apart physically maybe, and they're okay. They're getting these strong, wise, seasoned parts, and women aren't given that, or if they are, they're kind of background, secondary characters. Now they just kind of have very few. They're not the lead protagonist, and I mean, we still seem to hit up against that. That's kind of been Hollywood for centuries. It's been working that way.
So what stands in the way? I mean, if it sounds like a bit of a cute question, but if you could snap your fingers and do one thing that would move this way down the track, Sally, what would it be? I mean, what needs to happen?
Well, I do think that revenue does play into what you were saying there. Like, if you look at the reason why these women are cast over and over, often it's they have box office. They have the potential, it probably is seen as a negative, unfortunately, which is, that they are an older female character. Oh, that might hurt our overall audience, but are we the ones with the disposable income? And we're the ones who want to watch women who reflect us, but I do think that's why they keep getting cast over and over, and they're not going to take a chance on an unknown. They want to protect their box office potential, which is unfortunate. I think for us, it's not being tied to revenue will allow us to take more risks, because if you do look at, we've had pitches for shows, I find though often they're very extreme. It's like you're going to get a show that's set in a senior's home, or you're going to get a show about 20-year-olds. I think that as writers and talent out there, we need to think about, a real reflection of a woman in her 40s or in her 50s or in her 60s. And it's probably why Mom is an interesting sitcom today, because you've got Allison Janney and Anna Faris. I mean, you still have both, but she's fantastic in that role. If there was more thinking like that, we have a wonderful comedy coming out with Catherine O'Hara, who's an older woman, and very funny. Just a little plug. But
a plug is okay. We got CBC on the wall.
And a WIFT Crystal Award winner, so that's another plug.
WIFT Crystal Award winner as well. And she, she's brilliant. So, but I think if I look at what comes in, and I look at when we're making decisions about series, rarely do I see those female characters depicted in what would be a realistic or interesting way. There's always seems to be the need to, put them in a senior's home. Oh, give them this illness. Oh, it's not just integrated into a drama. There always has to be something like a twist to it. And I don't think that there actually needs to be that twist. There needs to be strong writing. It's why when you look at the lists of favorite female protagonists on television in the last year, Red from Orange is the New Black, I think repeatedly appears. I think that tells us something right there.
Yeah, I think it tells us the audience is looking for that.
They want it, yeah.
Well, we're on shameless self-promotion time right now. You'll notice the hashtag on the wall, Fall for CBC. Please feel free to tweet out pictures, thoughts, anything at all. We're very happy to see that, and all the best ones are retweeted. If you had that magic wand, that finger snap, that you could make something happen in the industry as you see it, to move the portrayal of women closer to what we would think of as reality, how would you achieve that?
I think for me, it's getting women in the writing room. I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you want fully developed, multidimensional women, who better to write that than a woman, personally? And I think that's part of it. What we're seeing a lot of these, kind of one-dimensional women, because a lot of it is being written by men. And not to say that men can't cultivate great characters, but you write from your own experience, you tell stories from your own lived perspective, and so I think the more women we can get first in the writing room, because that's where the storylines are being built, and then hopefully you have producers and directors with the sensibility to carry that story forward. But for me, I think that's a huge one, is we're still so underrepresented at the writing room stage, and that's what's kind of exciting about some of the TV programs we talked about, is that you've got these really strong female showrunners pushing them.
We've got a microphone at the back. If anyone wants to join the conversation, if you have a question for these women, please just make your way to the back. But if you're all just engaged in this conversation, stay where you are and relax, and I'll keep going. If you wouldn't mind standing up there, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sort of a question and a comment. I wanted to ask what you think about some of these women that maybe do this on purpose. You look at somebody like Jodie Foster. She might have woken up when she was born and said, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to have to do to get there. And now she can call her own shots and do whatever she wants. I think that's important to look at. I think that some of these women who are not seeing these older women, I think a lot of them bow out by choice at this time of life in the world we're living in now. I think a lot of the older women do take a back seat by choice. They don't want to live that way anymore. They don't want to do it anymore.
It'd still be nice to see them represented, though.
It
you know,
would be.
In terms of where are women at this stage of their lives and what are they doing?
I was going to also address the indie filmmaking, and I think that's one thing that we have to really support and push as much as we can as well, because that's where we're going to see a lot of those powerful women who are younger now. They're going to get kicked a few times, and then suddenly they're going to be the ones that I think are coming up. I think the indie film industry is something that we really have to look at, because those stats, if it's going backwards, you know, that how are you going to fix that? I think that we're not going to fix that until we build up the other stuff to make those women who come out there. And some women, you'll watch an indie film and you won't believe that it's a woman who wrote it and directed it until you see it.
Well, you have just given me the perfect segue. Thank you very much, because Jennifer Podemski is standing right behind you, so come on and join us. Jennifer is an actor and a producer, and she's been working in film and television since she was 14 in Canada. Dance Me Outside, you'll recognize her for sure. We've just been talking about how we move the role and portrayal of women down the track, down the road in film. How do we get from this idea that you're either the virgin or the temptress as portrayed on television?
Thank you.
We were just sort of doing the, you know, if you could snap your fingers and make one thing happen, what would you love to see happen to improve the way women are portrayed?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah, if you could do that in 30 seconds, that'd be awesome.
You know, I think it is a multifold answer. I think there are, you know, the producers who are either women or, you know, fans of promoting women in television and the diversity of stories that women can bring to television and film. There's the writer's room, which, you know, for the most part, really, from what I see, are mostly populated with men. So more women in the writing departments and sort of behind the scenes and executive positions and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's really the women who are the storytellers just getting their stories made. You know, my film Empire of Dirt was probably the most difficult film to imagine because it was 3 women, 3 Aboriginal women. So first you got the Aboriginal thing, then you got the women thing, and then you got the 3 all in one package. So, but at the end of the day, you just have to make it. Even if you have to do it for $1. You got to do it.
What do you find? I mean, what gets in the way of you trying to either, you know, develop a project that has strong women or that portrays them that, or is it just you've got to be able to sell? You've got to be able to sell your project.
I think it's saleability of, you know, marketability of a product, and knowing, well, the team at the network knowing a lot more about what the market wants than I do. Me thinking in an idealistic way, oh, you know what the market wants? A cast of diverse women to tell, you know, a story to the world, and maybe that's not the case. I guess it's always about bringing audience to the table.
Although we were just talking about Orange is the New Black being, you know, precisely that, like a cast of diverse women telling this unique story.
Well, yeah, that's a great example.
There's one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need more Orange is the New Black. But out of prison, too. Like, out of prison women's stories. You know, I think women can be very scary, too, because we're, you know, so amazing and so powerful, so all-powerful. I just think it's scary to move out of that mold of, you know, temptress and mother, nurturer. But there are so many different things we could do. But then where are going to be the rules for the men? That's what we're going to be here talking about next time.
You think?
Oh, I like that.
You know, it's
Stay
interesting.
tuned.
We've talked about, you know, the need for, you know, I would love more representation of women closer to my age. Having stronger female leads. We talked about, you know, the evolution of more and more women in roles as directors and producers as more and more women come into the industry and build a real bulk of experience and have the experience behind them to take those roles. But you mentioned needing more young female writers. So what would stand in the way of that? Because I think I should be able to, if I'm a young woman and I want to write, that nothing is stopping me, that there's nothing in the way of me versus the young guy who wants to be a writer. So what's in the way?
I think historically in Canada, and just looking at television and writers' rooms are not huge the way they might be in the States. They're much smaller. And, you know, there has been a long history of just very few showrunners, which is growing.
So paint this for me, because this is,
Right.
you know, a bit of language I'm not familiar with. So when you're talking about a writer's room, what are we talking about? A physical space, and you're talking about showrunners? I mean,
Yeah,
what
usually
are these real roles?
so you assemble a room and someone has to helm that room and lead the show. So you'll have a series, a drama series, say, and you need to have, it might be the person who created the series, usually it is, and they need to kind of work with a number of writers. They're not likely going to write 13 episodes themselves, so they need to assemble a room of writers, and usually it's a mix, you know, mid-level writers, junior writers, to kind of break the arc of the series, so take you through the entire series, and then hand out the episodes, rewrite the episodes. So you're working very closely together, discuss the characters and where they're going. Does this make sense? I mean, all rooms are slightly different, so it's very important to have female showrunners or men that are very proactively recruiting young female writers for their rooms. And you do see that here. I mean, I think Tassie Cameron, who showruns Rookie Blue, is a brilliant example of someone who has, you know, every year is bringing women up through the ranks, young writers, and spends an incredible amount of time, you know, training and supporting. We have a new series. I know it looks like I'm just plugging our shows, but it is fabulous, with Laurie Finstad, who's one of the most talented writers in the country. She did Durham County, so she is showrunning a series with very strong female characters as well, and
Good.
she has a room of women writers. You know, I think it's always good to have a balance, you know, to have both, but I think you have to have showrunners who not only, if they aren't women, they have to actually be committed to having women in the room. And sometimes, historically, it's been a bit of a, I'm going to work with the same 3 people over and over and over. And it's hard to break into that.
Jennifer, there are young women in this room and who will be listening to this as it plays back. I mean, what kind of advice would you give to young women who want to get into this industry, who have something they want to say? They want a chance to write, to be involved.
Oh my goodness. I would say that just like anything, you have to be tenacious and be persistent, and you will get a lot of no's and a lot of rejection, not because you're not good or pretty or you know, talented, but because you're not in the right place at the right time, perhaps. So to just keep on trucking and always training in every way you can. You know, a writer might want to take an acting class, or an actor might want to take a producing seminar. I think in this industry, in this country, we're very fortunate to be able to transfer between sort of platforms and careers within the industry. I think we're very fortunate. It's not the same in the States. You know, you're in theater and you stay in theater, and it's amazing if you're able to, you know, transfer into film. But here we have the opportunity to capitalize and harness, you know, all those platforms. So to just do it, and if one thing's not working out, turn to something else within the same sort of reality.
Heather, you know, it's interesting. You always feel like the consumer actually has a lot of power. Certainly as someone on television, I know that, you know, as the consumers, the people who watch television, if they don't like what I'm doing, they have the power to make sure I'm not doing it anymore. How does the wider consumer, the public, have an impact on what film and television is providing to us? How do we communicate as consumers of it that we want to see more and a wider depiction of women?
Well, I think it kind of, goes back to talking about, Aaron Sorkin. We were saying, that women are buying those movie tickets, and it's kind of funny because women are, I think the stats are like 55% of the movie ticket buyers are women. But I think part of it we're talking about is the audience that drives it. I think part of the problem is, we go to see what's offered to us because that's what's offered to us. But I think what we're seeing with some of these other platforms, like the Netflixes and that, where we're seeing some really amazing, thoughtful drama and lead protagonist female roles, is that people are kind of, voting with their viewership and their subscriptions. And I think, especially with digital, there's a lot more opportunity for people to kind of make that vote online and decide to watch certain things that may not be in the conventional platform or in the conventional set of genres. So, I mean, I think it's difficult because you can only, obviously consume what's available to you. But I think we're seeing that there are other avenues and people can start to voice their interest. And, it's the same with what you go to see at film festivals and that. You can vote by that. All those stats are taken every time they swipe your ticket. And if you choose to go see something that's a little out of the box and maybe a little indie and may not be the big Oscar runner, that helps because, as we talked about, it's all about marketing dollars and marketability, and people watch those numbers very closely. So it is about, putting your money where your interests lie and going in and supporting those smaller films at those film festivals or in the theaters. Yeah.
I just want to see if there's one more question out in the audience before we start to wrap things up today. No, we have been very efficient. We have answered everyone's questions. Oh, we have one more here.
It's not so much a question as it is a comment. I'm just sitting here and my blood is boiling over all the things you guys are talking about, because I feel that as an audience member, but also as someone who works in comedy and theater. And you're talking about Girls and Orange is the New Black, and the scenes, I really like this season of Girls. I really, really like this season. And the scene that really sticks out in my head, because it just felt so uncomfortable because it was so real, is the scene when they're in the hospital, the grandmother's passing away, and the sisters have a fight. And it's a female fight. And they're getting in there and they're getting ugly. And I loved it because that felt real for me. It felt deeply uncomfortable because of how real it was. And what I'm liking about Orange is the New Black or Girls or things like that is they're not showing, like you said, it's not the whore or the virgin, it's like multi-dimensional women who aren't always perfect. They don't, like in Orange is the New Black, they don't look pretty. They're wearing those orange outfits, but they're rocking them. They're like, I gotta wear this, this is what I'm gonna do. And I'm loving that I'm starting to see like real women on film, and that even that this conversation is happening, because I just get so frustrated and I tune out. I don't go to Hollywood movies very much anymore. And because of options like Netflix or even just YouTube, I love YouTube. I'm watching lots of stuff on YouTube because I can access more women and what women are talking about and what they're interested in. I'm on there.
I agree with you. I think we all do, in the sense that because the ability for all of us to access a lot of wider stuff now, whether it's YouTube or it's HBO or it's Netflix or whatever, is going to force the change, because that's where we're finding what we want to watch, what feels like us or what we can relate to, because I cannot relate to Jennifer Aniston. I can't. So, I'm relating to other women I'm seeing on film.
And I like seeing Lena Dunham naked. Show it all, girl. Like, show it. I want to see it. And that extends to Game of Thrones. I'm a fan of Game of Thrones. I'm a new fan. I recently started watching it. I struggled through the first season because I found it deeply misogynistic. And so are the second, third, and fourth seasons.
Someone was binge watching.
Yeah, but they at least I'm seeing a progression in some of the female storylines. It's only slight, but at least it's a little bit more forward, and I'd love to see more of that. And I want to see guys naked on screen. Hey, exactly, like I really don't maybe I'm more for, I don't care about naked women on screen. Like if the women are choosing and they're comfortable with doing that, that's fine. I just want equal.
Equal
I want to
sounds
see
good to
Jon
me.
Snow naked, is what I want. See that reaction? We all
That sounds a good note to end it on too, because I know it's getting hot in here. So
That would be the tweet for this one.
I want to say thank you to our panelists, Sally Catto from CBC, we have Heather Webb from WIFT, and Jennifer Podemski, who joined us after going through this mad traffic maze that is Toronto right now. So thank you for getting yourself here and participating in this.
Thank you.
And thank you to And, you know, shameless plug while you're here, while I've got you. Don't forget to tweet out fall for CBC, and please do what we would really like you to do, which is tune in and watch CBC this fall. There's lots coming your way. It's always good, and we always want to share in the conversation with you. So be a party, pull up a chair, watch, listen, download. We've got lots of ways for people to engage with CBC in this country, so take advantage. And thanks for joining us.